Hey guys, I just wanted to go through some quick figures on the Rise of the Oathbreakers book series, starting with Rise of the Oathbreakers Part 1. It doesn't have Part 1 in the name or part of the title because after I got done writing this book, I swore I'd never write a second. So there was no Part 1 until I got to thinking more and more about it. Well, then I ended up writing a second one, which became Part 2, but this one is still just regular Rise of the Oathbreakers, the book that started it all. I had to self-publish because unless you have real horsepower behind your name, political, societal, financial, or whatever it is, self-help, exercise, you're not going to get the Random Houses or Penguin Books or the Schuster and Schusters to pick up your book and offer you some kind of wonderful advance. No, self-publish. Every penny comes out of your pocket, and you do all the work. I did. I do all my own work. I write it. I design it. I do all the graphic work. I design the front and back cover. But what you see is me. Everything in every book I've written is me. And it's an unbelievably challenging creative process. And it's just so much more than just writing a book. You are so emotionally invested. When you decide to self-publish, you go into it on the front end knowing what the industry-wide averages are in terms of book sales. Well, here's a question for you. When it comes to the average maximum number of books that sell when they're self-published, what do you think that figure is? I don't think you're ready for how low it actually is. The average maximum that each book sells when it's self-published is 250. 250 copies. That's why it puts you in debt. And you go into it knowing that, I'm not going to make money. So there has to be something else that acts as an inspiration. There has to be something about the message that you want to convey. And what was it that inspired you in the first place to want to take on that kind of financial and time-related obligation? Because it's massive. And in my case, it was First Amendment activists, auditors, the cop watchers, and such. So what was it about this book that beat the industry average by a factor of about 9? Well, that reason has a name, and the name is David Villa, San Joaquin Valley Transparency. Without David's early buy-in and the way that he promoted the book, this would not have sold 250 copies. And I'm going to be able to back that up. I'm not just throwing that out there. But even the 2037 figure is kind of skewered because I bought at least 200 copies out of my own pocket because I have to buy my own book. Just like anyone else, it's penny for penny. I buy them off Amazon and I send them to people. So that's another, at $15 a book average, which is actually a little bit low, that's another $3,000 or so completely gone, lost right out of the bottom line. This is not a money-making deal, and I want to make sure that people understand that. Because I know I did get accused a few years ago, oh, you ruin lives, now you're making money off of those. It's like, shut up. I didn't ruin anyone's life, and I'm sure as fuck not making money. So that's kind of an important part to get across to people, that there had to be something else that inspired me. Well, it was the work of activists because they were exposing something that was, criminal. The police were acting criminally. It wasn't just criminally negligent, it was criminal culpability and conspiracies to violate rights. And on top of it, when I was doing my research, it was the way that they mistreated people as a matter of routine. And it was all four corners of the country and everywhere in between. It wasn't, for goodness sake, it was like the ones who tried to be polite and professional were few and far between. I'm not used to that. I never would have survived as a game warden treating people that way. But apparently once you get into the, I don't know. I don't want to speculate. It was so foreign to me then, and it is now, and it always will be. I never would have ever been able to get away with that, nor would I have wanted to. So it was a combination of violating rights and the way they treated people, and they just didn't care. And I recognized that early on, and I said, God, they're exposing something that somebody needs to tell a story outside of just doing audits and stuff and outside of YouTube or social media, because I know how to write, and I saw that there was a gap in education, and it was in books. And so I said, I'm going to write. I don't need to do the other stuff. Plenty of other people are doing that. But when it comes to recognizing the work of activists and using their work and telling their story for them in the form of a book. But I can tell you before I move on to Rise of the Oathbreakers Part 2, and I'm just going to lay it out there very generically. By and large, the vast majority of activists have turned their backs on the books. I send them copies, they go unread. How do I know that? Because they tell me. I reach out to them via email to either let them know about the books or even to offer sending them copies, and it's almost 100% failing to even respond. What am I supposed to think? I'm only reporting facts on the ground. It's not that I wish it was like that, but that's my experience when it comes to trying to light a fire under the activist community about the books that they helped inspire. The only ones that I'm aware of that any activist has inspired. So that's just the way it is. And when I get into Rise of the Oathbreakers Part 2 and what the sales are for that book, you'll see what I mean. Now, when it comes to Part 2, I'm not going to reveal the total number of books sold to date until I put things in context. Part 2 came out in June of 2023. It is now September 2025, so we're talking over 2 years, 27 months. Remember when I mentioned that 250 max figure early on? Regarding Part 2, I have promoted the hell out of that compared to Part 1. I have promoted the hell out of Part 2 for the last 2 years. And over the course of those 2 years, I've made a ton of videos about Part 2 that eclipse anything I did for Part 1. I'm not going to belabor the point anymore. I have made the case that I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm talking about. You can watch a video. You can read along with the excerpts. And it's not even a case of, well, I'm writing about that particular incident in that particular activist video. It's the concept of what the cops are doing wrong, which they do over and over and over. I have already figured it out, and I've got it written into the book, even if it's a generic format. And I can go into a lot better detail about what's going on and what the cops are doing wrong than you ever can in a video. It's a better learning experience. I can go into more detail. I can provide better context. I can talk about plain language and legislative intent. You can't do that in a video. There was one video about Part 2. I had over 13,000 views. 13,000, that's really high for me. Not for others, but for me, it's astronomical. But when you factor in the videos I've made where I talk about Part 2, it's tens of thousands of people know about Part 2 just from my videos, let alone, well, maybe they were shared by some of the viewers, some of the subscribers. I mean, I have no way to know that. But tens upon tens of thousands of people know about Part 2. I have proven I know what I'm talking about, and they can trust the information in the book.